Staff Sergeant Reed, she began. Please tell this committee about the events of March 15th, 2019, in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. Marcus took a deep breath and began to speak. He told the truth, all of it. The illegal order. His refusal to comply. The cover-up that followed. The documents and evidence provided by the survivors of QALA-E-No. As he spoke, he watched the faces of the committee members change. Some looked shocked. Others appeared calculating, no doubt thinking about the political implications of what they were hearing. When he finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Sergeant Reed, Senator Morse said finally, you realize the gravity of what you're alleging? Yes, ma'am, I do. And you're prepared to face the consequences of these allegations? Marcus looked back at the survivors in the gallery. Amina gave him an encouraging nod. Dr. Kadiri placed his hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. Senator, I've been facing the consequences of that day for 4 years. I lost my career, my reputation, my family's respect. But I gained something. More important, the knowledge that 47 innocent people are alive because I chose to do the right thing. I can live with the consequences. What I couldn't live with was the silence. The aftermath, the hearings made national headlines. Within weeks, FBI raids were hitting Blackstone security offices across the country. 3 senators and 2 Pentagon officials resigned in disgrace. Military contracts worth billions of dollars were suspended pending investigation, Marcus found. Himself at the center of a media storm. Some outlets painted him as a hero who had exposed systematic corruption. Others suggested he was a disgraced soldier, seeking attention and revenge. He didn't care about any of it. What mattered was the phone call from his daughter Emma. Dad, her voice was tentative, uncertain. I saw you on the news. I wanted to call and say I'm proud of you. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. I know we haven't talked much since the divorce, Emma continued. And I know things have been hard for you. But what you did, standing up like that, it took real courage. I'm sorry, Em, for everything, for not being the father you deserved. You were always the father I deserved, Dad. I just didn't understand. Why until now? 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of his new apartment in Arlington, Virginia, a modest 2-bedroom place, but infinitely better than the Cleveland studio. The job at the investigative journalism nonprofit didn't pay much, but it was meaningful work, helping other whistleblowers navigate the system he had learned to master. His phone buzzed with a text from Amina. Family dinner this Sunday? The kids want to hear more war stories. He smiled and typed back, I'll bring dessert. The survivors of Kala-E-No had become more than sources or allies. They had become his chosen family. They understood the weight of moral choices in ways that most Americans never would. They knew what it meant to lose everything for the sake of Principal Dot. As he unlocked his front door, Marcus reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. 4 years ago, he had been a broken man, haunted by guilt and shame. Now he was rebuilding, surrounded by people who valued his integrity over his credentials. The mail was waiting on his kitchen counter, mostly bills and junk, but one envelope caught his attention. No return address, postmarked from Virginia. Inside was a single photograph, the village of Kala-E-No as it looked today. New buildings, solar panels, a small school with children playing in the yard. On the back, someone had written in careful English, "Thank you for our tomorrow." Marcus pinned the photo to his refrigerator next to a picture of Emma at her college graduation, the first family event he'd been invited to in years. His laptop chimed with an incoming video call. Dr. Kadiri's face appeared on the screen, smiling broadly. "Marcus, my friend, I have news. The village council has voted. They want to name the new school after you." Marcus laughed, shaking his head. That's not necessary, Rashid. I just did what any decent person would do. No, Dr. Kadiri's expression grew serious. You did what one decent person among many did. That made all the difference. They talked for another hour about the ongoing investigations, about the trials that were beginning, about the slow process of justice. When the call ended, Marcus opened a beer and sat on his small balcony, watching the sunset paint the Virginia sky in shades of gold and crimson. He thought about Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, dead these many years. He thought about the orders that had been given and the orders that had been refused. He thought about the price of integrity and the cost of silence. Most of all, he thought about a little girl at a well, carrying water and humming a tune, alive. Because someone chose compassion over compliance. His phone buzzed one final time that evening. Another message from Afghanistan, but this one was different. The profile photo showed an elderly man with a long white beard standing in front of what looked like a mosque. Mr. Reed, my name is Imam Fahim. I am the religious leader of Kala Ino. I wanted you to know that we pray for you every Friday. At our services, we pray for your health, your happiness, and your family. We pray that Allah will bless you for the mercy you showed our people. But there is something else you should know. Something we discovered only recently. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes did not die in a car accident. He was killed by his own people when he threatened to expose the full extent of the corruption. The same people who ordered the destruction of our village. You were never meant to survive that mission either, Mr. Reed. Your refusal to follow orders didn't just save our lives, it saved your own. The order was always meant to be a suicide mission. Hayes was told to eliminate all witnesses, including his own men. You were supposed to die in that village. Another casualty of war. Another inconvenient truth buried in the Afghan desert. Marcus stared at the message, his hands trembling. The full scope of what had happened, what had almost happened, crashed over him like a wave. He hadn't just refused to commit mass murder. He had unknowingly escaped his own execution. The survivors of Kala Ino hadn't just been gathering evidence of corruption for 4 years. They had been protecting the man who saved them from the same forces that had tried to destroy them all. In that moment, Marcus finally understood why Dr. Kadiri had called their investigation returning a favor. They hadn't just been seeking justice. They had been saving his life for the second time. The message arrived at 3:47 a.m., lighting up Marcus Reed's phone like a digital screen in the darkness of his studio apartment. You saved my daughter. We remember. Marcus bolted upright, sweat beading on his forehead as he stared at the notification from Facebook Messenger. The profile picture showed a young Afghan woman holding a child, both smiling at the camera. His hands trembled as he opened the message thread. My name is Amina Kadiri. You were soldier in Kandahar province, 2019. You remember village of Kala Ino? You remember day you said no? The phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. Marcus pressed his palms against his temples, trying to stop the flood of memories threatening to overwhelm him. Kala Ino, the village. Order. 4 years earlier. Kandahar province, Afghanistan red. You copy? Lieutenant Colonel Hayes' voice crackled through the radio. Sharp and impatient. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reed adjusted his grip on his M4 carbine, eyes scanning the cluster of mud brick buildings 200 meters ahead. The village of Kala Ino sat quiet in the pre-dawn darkness, smoke rising lazily from a few chimneys. Intelligence reports claimed Taliban fighters were using it as a staging ground, but something felt wrong. Copy, sir. Visual on the target. Good. Remember the mission parameters. This is a known insurgent stronghold. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Clean sweep, no survivors. These people have been harboring enemy combatants for months. Marcus's stomach lurched. He'd heard whispers about Hayes, about operations that went too far, about civilian casualties covered up in after-action reports. But this was different. This was a direct order to massacre an entire village. Sir, requesting clarification. Are we certain about civilian status? The radio went silent for a long moment. When Hayes spoke again, his voice carried a dangerous edge. Sergeant Reed, you have your orders. These people chose their side when they started sheltering terrorists. Execute the mission. Through his scope, Marcus watched a young girl emerge from one of the houses, maybe 7 years old, carrying a water jug. She skipped toward a well in the center of the village, humming a tune he couldn't hear, but could somehow feel in the way she moved. Sir, I have eyes on civilians, children. Reed, if you don't have the stomach for this, I'll find someone who does. This village has been marked for termination. Every person in that settlement is a hostile. Marcus thought about his own daughter. Back in Ohio, Emma, who would have been about the same age as the girl at the well. His finger moved away from the trigger. Negative, sir. I cannot comply with that order. The radio exploded with Hayes' voice. What did you just say to me, Sergeant? I said negative, sir. I cannot and will not fire on civilians. You fucking coward. I'll have you court-martialed for insubordination. Marcus made a decision that would haunt and define the rest of his life. Instead of following the order, he keyed his radio to the emergency frequency and called in a false report about IED activity in the area, warning any nearby units to avoid the village until EOD could clear it. Within minutes, helicopters were redirecting, and the mission was scrubbed. Present day, Cleveland, Ohio. Marcus picked up his phone with shaking hands. More messages had arrived. There are 47 of us who lived because of you. My son would not exist without your choice. We have looked for you for so long. His laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, casting blue light across empty beer bottles and unpaid bills. Marcus had been unemployed for 8 months since losing his job at the VA, another casualty of his unreliable service record. The discharge hadn't been dishonorable, but it might as well have been. Hayes had made sure Marcus's military career ended in disgrace. He opened Facebook and stared at the messages. Dozens of them now, all from people claiming to be from Kala'ino. Photos of families, children playing in dusty streets, elderly men with weathered faces and kind eyes. We know what happened to you after. We know why you lost your career. We want to help, Marcus laughed bitterly. Help? What could a handful of Afghan refugees possibly do for a washed-up soldier living in a Cleveland slum? His phone rang. Unknown. International number. Hello? His voice came out as a croak. Mr. Reed? The accent was thick, but the English was clear. My name is Dr. Rashid Kadiri. I'm calling from Kandahar. I believe you know my village. Marcus's legs gave out, and he slumped into a chair. How did you find me? We never stopped looking. After that day, we knew we owed you a debt. It took years, but we found stories about what happened to you. About Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. About why your career ended. I don't understand. Mr. Reed, there are things you do not know about that day. About why we were really targeted. About who Hayes was working for. Marcus felt something cold crawl up his spine. What are you saying? I am saying that village was never harboring terrorists. We were witnesses, and Hayes needed us dead. The truth unfolds over the next hour. Dr. Kadiri laid out a story that made Marcus's blood run cold. Hayes hadn't been operating under military orders that day. He'd been working for a private military contractor called Blackstone Security. The company had been funneling weapons to various Afghan factions and skimming profits from reconstruction. Contracts Kala'ino had been unfortunate enough to witness a Blackstone convoy dumping bodies in a nearby ravine. Afghan interpreters and contractors who had discovered the arms dealing operation and threatened to expose it. We saw the trucks, Dr. Kadiri explained. We saw the bodies. Some of us even recognized faces people from other villages who had gone missing. Hayes could not risk us talking to other American forces. But why target the entire village? Because he could not know who had seen what. Easier to eliminate all witnesses and blame Taliban, your refusal to follow orders. It saved 47 innocent people. Marcus stared at his reflection in the laptop screen. And Hayes? What happened to him? He died 3 months after Afghanistan. Car accident in Virginia. Very convenient timing. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Hayes was dead, but the corruption he'd been part of was still out there. And Marcus, the soldier who'd refused to commit mass murder, was living in poverty, while the system that had tried to make him a killer continued to operate. Dr. Kadiri, I appreciate you reaching out, but I don't see how. Mr. Reed, we have been busy these past 4 years. Many of us came to America as refugees. We have built new lives, started businesses, made connections. And we have been investigating. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming email. Check your inbox. Dr. Kadiri said the email contained dozens of documents, financial records, military contracts, correspondence between Blackstone Security and various government officials. Names Marcus recognized from the news: senators, Pentagon officials, defense contractors. My God, Marcus whispered. We have been gathering evidence for years, but we needed someone on the inside, someone with military credentials who could testify about what really happened that day. You want me to be a whistleblower. We want you to be a hero. Again. The plan the next 3 weeks passed in a blur of secure communications, encrypted file transfers, and clandestine meetings. The network of survivors from Kala-i-No had grown into something. Marcus never could have imagined a sophisticated intelligence operation run by refugees who had become American citizens, doctors, engineers, and business owners. They had been methodically documenting the corruption that had nearly destroyed their village, building a case that reached into the highest levels of the Pentagon and Congress. But they needed someone with first-hand knowledge of the military operations to serve as a credible witness. Marcus found himself in a safe house in Dearborn, Michigan, surrounded by people whose lives he had saved without even knowing it. Amina, the woman who had first contacted him, was now a nurse at Henry Ford Hospital. Her daughter, the little girl Marcus had seen at the well, was thriving in American schools. You gave us our future, Amina told him as she handed him a cup of tea. Now let us give you yours. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus would testify before a congressional committee about the events in Kala-i-No, backed by the evidence the survivors had gathered. The story would expose not just the corruption in Afghanistan, but the systematic cover-ups that had followed. But there was a catch. There will be consequences. Dr. Kadiri warned him during their final briefing. Powerful people will be implicated. They will try to destroy your credibility, maybe even threaten your life. Marcus thought about his daughter, Emma, now a sophomore at Ohio State, who barely spoke to him anymore. He thought about the nightmares that still woke him every night, the guilt that had eaten away at him for years, not for disobeying orders, but for all the other orders he had followed without question. I should have done this years ago, he said finally. The testimony the hearing room was packed with reporters, cameras, and spectators. Marcus sat at the witness table, his dress blues pressed and his medals polished for the first time in years. Behind him, he could see familiar faces: Amina, Dr. Kadiri, and dozens of other survivors who had made the journey to Washington to support him. Committee Chairman Senator Patricia Morse called him to testify. Marcus had researched her background. A former military prosecutor with a reputation for tenacity and integrity.